And this morning, I'm with the chairman of Kariobangi Sharks. Well, that's a team that played against Everton and won 4 months ago. And welcome very much, Robert Mauga. Mr. Mauga, yes, how are you?
Thank you.
This morning, you're doing very well.
I'm good, thank you.
Kariobangi Sharks, I know your sponsor is here, so I'm sure that he gives you something to put on the shirt, and the same evening, the result doesn't just go well.
Football sometimes is what it is, and it happens. For Sharks now, it's just bad luck. I'm sure our time is coming. Most of the big teams, when you think of the Barcelonas and the Real Madrids in this season, they started in a very bad way. So it's about just getting there. Of course, the faster we win, the better confidence the players are going to have, and I'm sure we'll get the results.
And also with Leon Kiptun, who is a Betway country manager. Leon, welcome. And the first thing I'd like to say is, your motivation for partnering, for example, with Kariobangi Sharks and not any other club in the country.
Well, it's an interesting thing to decide on who to partner with as far as sports is concerned. And in this particular case, we took our time. As you may have noticed, we haven't sponsored a team in Kenya for the 3 years that we have been in business in Kenya. For us, it was really about the values that Sharks possess, and key among those things, it was their passion for nurturing talent. We've seen that. If you watch the documentary that they have, it's there on YouTube, you'll see a lot about what Sharks is about, where they started, their values, and what drives them. So that was part of the motivation. The second one, of course, it was how they're organized, how they're structured. Sharks is actually registered as a limited company, which makes it very easy for accountability. And that, I hope, is a conversation we can have, because it's a big issue, I know.
I know it's a big issue. And for you, it almost sounds cliche these days when, you see, for people from the corporate world, they say about values and that. What are these values that Kariobangi Sharks would speak about? So that if I hear a player, for example, if your goalkeeper or Yamba says, I have this fracture on my hand, I'm not getting treated, that kind of thing, what are these values?
So it's been deliberate for a while. When we formed this as a limited company, first of all, we put in governance structures. So we have clear reporting guidelines. You know who you're reporting to. If you go to the Registrar of Societies now, or Register of Companies, you'll be able to know who owns Kariobangi Sharks. So as he says, decision-making is quick. But when decision-making on the top is quick, then it trickles down to the rest of the team. We have 6 teams now. We have the senior team, under 20, under 17, under 15, under 13, under 10. And that requires a lot of good structures. Now, when you think about it, for them to come in, and any other sponsors to come in, they look at a lot of things. What have you been doing over time? So we deliberately made Kariobangi Sharks a brand. And a brand is to let people know. For example, we actually won the best African film in the Kenya Sports Film Festival yesterday. Why? Because we are telling our story. A lot of the football clubs are not telling their story. So that good organization is important. Now, when you go to the player, there's a player welfare. Not just on the contract, but just nurturing growing talent. We are getting these kids straight from school, the players. So we have to nurture them to be good footballers, to be good people in life. What values do they aspire as to be as players? So that goes to the contract. You get paid on time. We teach you about financial management. They have medical insurance, because we are looking at football as a business, and you need to take care of your assets. So I think we've just gone beyond what players are. We've to the players themselves and from the community that they're coming from. So we really do a lot in the community.
And for you, Leon, and when you get in there, maybe even as a corporate and for any other corporate, and you partner with this, there is some takeout that you would also demand from the people who you partner with. What are these parameters that you set as members of the corporate world?
A lot of people would say that the first thing is performance on the pitch, but to be very honest, that's not the first thing. The first thing is that they uphold the values that they carry as a club, and they represent the brand well through those values. One of the very first engagements we had with Kariobangi Sharks is that they invited us to Dandora to partner with the 16 teams that play in the Dandora Stadium, because they themselves, in their small way, have been trying to do something to help those teams, and even to get talent from those teams and help them to get into top flight football. And that by itself was something that we saw that we can plug into, because as Betway, it is a value that we carry to support as much as possible community sports. And so for us, number one is, will they continue to uphold the values that they have presented to us at the beginning of this engagement? Because again, you will notice as Betway across the world, we're probably not sponsoring the top 4, top 3 or top 1 teams in the leagues that we participate in. But we are very keen about specific clubs that have very specific values that they carry. So that's number one. And then of course, we now get into performance on the pitch, and that's the pressure that I'm going to be giving Robert and the team, that we want to see Sharks doing well. We want to see Sharks at the top of the league. We want to see Sharks continue to excel. I know they've had a difficult start to the season. That by itself, there were challenges, of course. He's mentioned a few of them. He's talked about them in other forums. But we hope that they'll go past those challenges, and in the next games, we begin to see Sharks pick up their form.
Now, the nature of your business requires that you have a lot of accountability. For the simple reason, one, it's straightforward. Your revenue streams are easy to track.
Yes.
You don't take checks or whatever. So at the end of the day, when you put back money, is that you also require accountability from this, from people that you work with. Mm-hmm. What are the accountability structures that are demanded from the corporate world?
Okay. Number one, of course, I mean, if you're carrying the brand, it's about the individuals who carry that brand for you, because you've got the team that is wearing that shirt every 2 or 3 or every 2 days in a week to get onto the pitch and play. If we're going to put money into that that particular vehicle called Kariobangi Sharks, which we have, then we expect that the players will be taken care of. That we won't hear issues of later on, we hear issues of players are not getting on the pitch, or they are playing dismally because their needs are not being taken care of by the club. Then the question becomes, what are you doing with the funding that we are putting into your club? We may not be catering for your needs 100%. However, we have met a gap that you said you have. Yes. And if that gap means that it eases the burden on the club, it's not really easing the burden on the club, but it's easing the burden on the players that actually get on the pitch every day.
Now, one of the things about football is the way at times the advertising deals are structured. I'll give an example of maybe a CAF who have got a partnership with a telecom and also a betting firm, and at times their regulations are, if it clashes, then you don't have it on your shirt. How do you then present such a case to your sponsors?
I think as you grow, you understand how contracts are being done. I think when we had our first initial sponsor, as KPL, we gave away all the rights. Sometimes we didn't know. We gave away radio rights. We gave away digital rights. We gave away all these things that were not meant to be given to one person for a small value. So what we have done is, over time, we have learned how to do these things well. And we have looked at the global standards of how the big leagues have come. 2 years ago, we were in Spain, La Liga, to see how they do their things. I think 3 years ago, we were in Bundesliga. So we are trying to gauge ourselves, benchmark against the big leagues that are there. So right now, we are not going to have that problem. I know we had it before. So the issue for us is not the contrasting advertisers you're going to have, but how do you sell yourself now to a broader perspective? Because I think when you talk about clashings, you're looking at one industry. We want to have as many corporates come in as much as possible from various industries. Why? I think we've been depending on one industry, and when one leaves, then we are on our knees. Is it possible for us to go to category sponsors? Let's say you have a banking partner, you have a communications partner, you have a hydration partner. So even if one has a problem, then the rest keep on carrying you as you sort yourself out.
Okay, I want to ask you, you mentioned about the properties. I want to take the Kenyan Premier League as it is. So for one, the matches that you play in the league are actually KPL matches. So at what point have you foregone what you think should belong to Kariobangi Sharks?
So as it's structured, all the rights are ours. So KPL was an entity that was formed to exploit these rights. So right now, because there is no sponsor, we own all our rights. So as clubs now, we can do as much as we can. And that's why now the ingenious ways of trying to, for the clubs to get some money here and there. But we own all rights. Now when a sponsor comes in, for example, a title sponsor, there are rights that we give them. When you come broadcasting partner, there are rights that go to that partner. So what happens is, even at the point of giving these rights, there are still rights that belong to us. When you go to the stadium, you can activate your ticketing, your presentation, and all these things. So it's quite a huge array of rights that we have, economic rights, that even we need to understand better.
And when it comes to this, because these are things that, for example, he's mentioning is one of the reasons that any corporate would want to leverage on. The question is, then, when you come in, at what point do you feel that there is an ease of doing business for you?
For
because
us,
I've seen, because I can mention two farms, without mentioning two farms, there are two farms that had, and a total of 4 teams that felt the effect of the CAF, deal that I'm talking about. They couldn't use their shirt sponsor simply because it clashed.
For us, we do understand obviously that Kariobangi Sharks or a team as Sharks, is one piece of the bigger football puzzle in Kenya. And when we enter into an agreement with Sharks like we have done, we understand the contracting between ourselves and Sharks, the rights that they have within the KPL and within any other league that they'll choose to play in. And at the same time, we do have our own sort of demands within the contract as a brand that's coming in, because at the end of the day, the fact remains that we are in business. We are seeking some form of visibility, but at the same time, we have other interests beyond that that touches into our own values as a business. So for us, the bigger motivation is how have they built their brand over time. And I'll continue to use the example of Sharks, because this is a club or a team that has been in formation the last 18 years, and they have a journey, a very solid journey, and solid results that you can see of what they have done as a team, what they have done for the community in which they operate. So there's something to work with there. So as a way of motivation, obviously, we're not just taking Sharks because Sharks is one among many teams, but because Sharks is a brand. They are actually a very solid brand, and they have something to write home about who they are, how they have developed themselves, and what they stand for, not only as a team, but as a people who operate in a particular community.
Now, and Leon, I want to stick to this. When you are in the corporate world and you're going into sponsorships and you do these things, there is always the line that, here we are, we would like to engage, for example, during the Kenyan Premier League. You've got, all sorts of, there are all sorts of competitions, there are all kinds of laws. What is it that you would like to see as a big takeout, especially in the stadium environment, from the corporate world?
Good thing with that is that a lot of it is already on the contract, so it's not so much that we are fighting or debating about what happens, like especially on home games, because we may not have so much control on away matches. Away matches, you'd find, like, for example, if they are playing Bandari, it's KPA. If they are playing Sofapaka, it's our competition. So we may not necessarily have the rights that we would have when Sharks is at home. But when it comes to home games, it's very clear in the contract, including the percentage of branding rights that we have in the stadium, including the opportunity to activate within the stadium as well. So all that is usually determined at the contracting stage, because it's not something that you say, okay, we're going to give you funding.
Apologies.
It's all right. God bless you. It's not something that you decide that we're going to give you funding and then later on come and discuss the nitty-gritty. It's been a process of actually all those things are on the table for discussion to say, hey, what are we looking for as a business, and what can actually Sharks do for us as part of this sponsorship. So there's a lot that comes, especially in home matches. We know that Sharks right now has been really trying to figure out which is really their home ground. Yeah, I'm sure Robert will talk into that. But once all that is settled, right now it's Kasarani. But once all that is settled, then we have an easier way of determining what happens for us when Sharks is on the pitch. Yeah.
By the way, what's the home ground issue? Sofapaka have tried Machakos. They've tried Narok. At times, I think Tusker tried Meru. Which is your home ground?
We have Kasarani as our home ground for the time being. In the grand scheme of things, we want to build our own so that we do not have these issues. Remember, facilities are very expensive to build. So we require government to chip in. But we've seen what is happening, so we can't keep on lamenting. Can we do something? We went to Tali and got into a partnership. So that's our training grounds. If we can get into such partnerships and build a small 7,500, 10,000 seater, then we are good enough. We are looking at it now. I think in the next 3-4 years, we should have our own ground. But to add on what you're asking about, Barclays sponsored the English Premier League, but you had Stanchart on Liverpool.
On Liverpool, yes.
And you could see some other banking brands running on the pitch. I think when your brand is strong, then you are able to negotiate better. And that is what we need to do as KPL, to have a strong brand, so that when someone comes, they are not bullying us all over the place.
So as we speak right now at the KPL, and for most of the clubs, especially those are not non-institutional clubs, Gor Mahia, AFC Leopards, now Kariobangi Sharks, Kakamega Homeboys. I know at least the counties, for some of them, the county governments have taken them up. Sorry. And so for Paka, what is it that for these clubs, what's the perception out there, especially when it comes to the management, or if they're viewed as one-man shows?
Yeah. Remember, every club is run by someone who has a different vision to you. So what we are doing is, as the clubs getting ahead, can we show the other clubs the way to go? The community clubs are having a problem because of reporting. How do they report? Who has power to do what? So you have issues. And most of the teams, apart from probably 2 or 3, are all community or society based. And therein comes a problem, because when a sponsor comes, who does he speak to? When do they come and have a congruence of decisions to say this is where we are as a club? It's very tough, and I think it starts from how you're set up. So we need to reset, because when a sponsor comes, they need to see your corporate governance. They need to see what brand have you built, what is your history, am I good with these people? If you are not able to control your brand, then the sponsors will walk away, and that is a problem that we are having. Right now, the value of KPL is diminishing over time.
Well, I know the last value they had, I think, in terms of TV rights was about 160 million a year. And
Yes.
it's diminishing.
Yes, that was on the guy who left. But when he wanted to come back, it was even significantly lower, because they're saying, look at the industry. And that's why we're saying we really need to go wider. We have to cast that net wider so that we move away from one industry. But it has to start from ourselves, how we are set up. So the chairmen of the other clubs have to borrow a leaf from the ones who are ahead of them. Now, can we force them? No. I think all they have to do is see and ask. A lot of them are asking. We show our games on Facebook. So every other game you'll be able to see. We are trying now to see whether we can have our summer break somewhere out there. Why? Because we want to cast this net wide. We've won the film festival. Why? Because we are telling our story. So you see, there is a lot that needs to happen before a sponsor comes on the table. it has to be deliberate.
Now, for you sponsors, and I want you to be specific, especially when it comes to the financials.
Yes.
What is it that you demand, that you would demand from Robert at the end of this season?
Okay. I thought you were going to say before we went into the sponsorship, but...
All right, you can start before, financially, because...
Before, obviously, the first thing was for them to be able to show us their books and tell us that this is how we account, this is the amounts of money that we spend, a proper budget around their activities of their team, break it down to a monthly basis. So I took time to sit with Robert and actually have a look at even how they spent money in the year 2018, 2017, and just to be clear that these guys have some sense of financial. Say they're financially sound, so to speak. We were not looking for them to be profitable, to be honest. What we were looking for is that they're able to account for every coin that comes into their system. And that, for me, was satisfactory, that they could account for the coins that come into their system. So that was number one. So what are we looking for in the coming year? In the coming year, the most important thing for us is obviously that they continue with that, because we wouldn't have come in had they not have financial, some form of financial soundness. We would not have, because we would know we are putting our money into a hole. Yeah, and that is not something that any corporate, any sponsor whatsoever would like to do. In this day and age, in these economic times, you don't want to just put money in a hole. You actually want to see that your money is going into something meaningful and is actually going to be used the right way. So we looked at their governance structure. They have a board. He is the board chair.
Yes.
They have a management team, and the CEO is well known to us. So we know that there's someone who's accountable. If money gets lost, Linda might get fired in the process. So we are very clear that they have a very clear framework of who handles what. They have a proper finance team, people who have gone to university and they're BCom holders, finance with CPAs and all. Very happy to note that they're dealing with professionals within their entire structure. So that was good for us to do. Now into 2019, 2020, and by the time we are revisiting this contract, because we have a 1 year rolling contract that we review every year. We look at the performance of the contract, and then we have a mandatory clause to increase money every year. So he managed to twist us to make sure that we don't just negotiate for the sake of negotiating.
The same.
But we negotiate and make sure
or sign a long-term one.
Yes, or sign a long-term one once we have evaluated the first 12 months of the contract. But we are certain that they will have a pay increase if they do well for the year 2020. But for us, they need to continue with that sense of accountability, number one, because at the end of that 12 months, we'll still come back and say, how was our money used? Yeah, did it give value for the brand? And did it put value to the team? Did it go to the right place, to where it was supposed to go in the first place? So if those things check the box, and of course they need to still be in the KPL. So this trend that they currently have needs to change very quickly, and still continue to play football at the topmost level in the country. So our demands are not very many. They are basic. They are really basic about people who just need to do the right things to ensure that by the end of the 12 months there's impact in terms of the team, in terms of the community they operate in, and also there's impact for our brand.
Now, Robert, when it comes to things to do with monies and negotiating contracts in the country, I think it's say that for players a 2-year contract is very long term in the country. Hardly do we see anything. I mean, most contracts are between 18 to 24 months. How do you intend to have a change of culture where we hear people signing 4 or 5 year deals with a club? Or you have players who are actually one club players?
I can speak on myself. I think the club, we sign minimum 3 years to 5 years because we believe in the talent that we are acquiring. So you see, for us to build a brand, there's a trilogy of the club, who are the players, the sponsor, and the fans. So the fans need to see that you are there for the long term. The sponsor needs to see that also. So if you sign short-term contracts, it means that tomorrow, if your player becomes as good as he is, then he's being fought for. Do you have a going concern? And that is what we want. So our players sign contracts between 3 to 5 years. Of course, our whole idea is to ensure that we develop them and sell them overseas so that we are able to make
Actually, that club has been accused of that.
No, it's
This
when you look at the football industry now and how much players are making vis-a-vis the West, then we have to bridge that gap. We have to say that we need to get these players young, expose them. That's why we need such partners like Leon here. For us to ensure that these kids or the players we have are prepared very well in advance to make it in life. We want, when the head coach of the national team calls players, we want him to have a full house of 50, 100 international players playing regularly in big leagues, not 5 or 6 that we know about, and most of them are in lower leagues. So I think for us, the contracts are long-term, and most clubs need to do that.
Now, from the corporate world, because I know you speak as, at times you even speak as lobbies, even with your competition and everything, how do you want to, say, have some more conversations with the sporting sector? Because sports is basically a people's, it's actually, it goes across to the people. What is it that, outside of what you've demanded from Kariobangi Sharks, what are the other things that you want to see from, say, other sports? It could be athletics, could be volleyball, could be even be rallying.
I think first and foremost is the federations. Let me begin there. Is the federations. The respective federations of the different sports need to first begin to get extremely organized in terms of how they manage the sport. I know we've had challenges in football over the years, over the many years. This particular time, we've also had a chance to engage with FKF and the things that they have done. Happy so far with what they've done over the couple of years since the president came in. Of course, there's all other things that are being spoken about, but in terms of our engagement, we are content with the engagement so far. When we look at athletics, for example, Athletics Kenya, this is another area that by and large has been well managed, and you'd easily say that it is the second largest sport in Kenya if you look at the stats. Of course, football is the biggest sport everywhere, not only in Kenya. Another one that we've engaged with is the volleyball team, the volleyball association, and again, very well managed. But a lot of the federations, and then there are smaller sports that are not really out there. You don't hear much about what they're doing. So they don't create value for the sponsor. So the federations need to come out, get organized, begin to create value for their sports, for sponsors to come in, for corporates to come in. Because as a corporate, you first evaluate the value. What is the value of me? What is the value of me putting my shillings and cents on this? What does it mean for my brand, and how does it represent my brand? So that's to the federations. The other one is obviously to the government. One of the, and these are two things for me. For me specifically, the two things are first, an economic environment that is conducive, so that we are able to spare some change from our profit and loss accounts, and really put it into sponsorships, put it into developing sports. We are key stakeholders in sports, purely based on our industry, and we're happy to put money into sports. But the economic environment, the tax environment, all that needs to all align and work so that we are able to.
But I would ask, but there is a reprieve that came from the High Court recently?
Yes, that is correct. There's a reprieve that did come from the High Court, and that's the definition of withholding tax that was clarified. However, we do have a new tax that was signed in the finance bill the other day. That's the excise tax. So again, it still creates a bit of a conundrum for the industry, because you still do have a tax regime that is fairly not, it's not very favorable for the industry. We hope.
But there are still some people who think the industry is not kosher. Not kosher. But it is there.
I think that's a debate for another day. It's a debate for another day, to be honest.
All right.
But the economic environment, in terms of, and not only about taxation, because that's what affecting our industry, but generally in terms of the economics of the country, the macros of the country, and that being able to be a conducive environment for us to do business, so that we're able to, and this one I'm speaking broadly away from our industry, broadly to the business environment in the country, enabling us as corporates to really come out and say, okay, we are able to plug in money into sports, etc. The last thing for me for us corporates to be very comfortable is the facilities, and Robert has talked about it, is the sports facilities. To be honest, we have had an opportunity over the last, I've been in this company for 1 year now, And in that 1 year, to be honest, I have traveled. I have looked at sports facilities in this country, and we are not doing well, man.
That we can.
We are not doing well, to be honest. It's very difficult for teams, especially you hear a team that has been doing so well in the last 3 years, like Sharks, struggling to say where can we really have as our home ground. We have Kasarani, but Kasarani, you see, is a national monument almost that is used for everyone and by everyone. You can't call it a home ground for one particular team. There are many teams that call that a home ground. So we do have a serious challenge around sporting facilities. This is not only about football pitches, it's also about basketball courts, it's also about, basically, generally all types of sports are affected. And if there's something that within the next few years, the government needs to prioritize around sports, is facilities. As corporates, we may not be able to build the facilities. Yes, we can put money into sponsoring the teams, but really into building infrastructure, I think government.
That's a whole different.
That's
thing.
a whole different scenario.
And now you mentioned about infrastructure. How much does it cost you to, for example, take Narok for a year?
It depends on the agreements that you have. Normally, the pitches might not be up to standard to what football requires. So we get into an agreement with them to assist upgrade that particular infrastructure to at least a good playing surface. It's really tough because there are also a few. So even if you upgrade that to a playing level field, then you have 5 teams playing on one pitch. Then within 3 weeks, you do not have
the grass
again. So for me, I think we are not taking sports seriously. I think I'll say government is not taking sports seriously, because as a sporting nation, we should be able to get value out of the athletes that we have. For example, we have world beaters. We have record holders. What do we do? Do we even have a museum for them to come and see, to inspire our kids? You know, when do they start taking this seriously? Because once government takes this seriously, then we have the corporates who look at it in a different manner. Because when we walk to them, they say, but the government is not serious. How are we going to invest in your sector if the government itself is not serious about the sector? So we really need to push the needle more to get something out of corporates, whereas the government would have made it easier for us.
But what is it that you're doing, probably from the sporting end, to ensure that this is happening? Because, for example, the Kenya Volleyball Federation announced that in the next year, they're going to play all their volleyball indoors, even if it means playing in one place.
Yes.
Which, because that's the nature of the sport, it's an indoor sport as it is. So how much are you pushing? If we were to count for the KPL grounds, I think it's Kisumu, Kericho, Bukhungu. For Nairobi, I think Nyayo is yet to be open, but Kasarani is going to be closed. So Nairobi, I don't count. There won't be any stadium in Nairobi. So there's Narok and Machakos and Mbaraki.
Actually, in the last 2 weeks, we didn't have a stadium in Nairobi because Machakos was in a very bad state. We call it Nairobi. And Nyayo, of course, we know what's happening. Kasarani was closed because the surface had to be worked on. So we had to look for alternatives. We went to Afraha, our last 2 games, home games. We are basically pastoralists. We are basically pastoralists. And no one is taking note. That's why, for us, we have to take the initiative. We have to say, can we get 2 or 3 sponsors? Can we have 3, 4, 5 years? And from the sponsorship that we get, can we have some little money for development? So that when we went abroad, they said a match that is being played, let's say Sevilla is playing in a different place, Madrid is playing in a different stadium, there was standard. The grass was standard. The stadium, how the fans sit, how the referees come, what time they start. They all start at the same time. So that when someone comes and says, I want to be your broadcasting partner, there is a brand that they can say, yes, we understand how they're doing it. So it has to start with us. It's painful, but we have to put in a lot of our money.
But that was put in place when the TV people came in. Clubs suddenly became very obedient and punctual. Something that it's odd.
It was unheard of.
It was unheard of because I think yesterday, there was a game that kicked off 20 minutes late. but it was supposed to kick off at 3, kicked off at 3:20.
It has to be deliberate from us. We also need to be serious. That's why we are saying if you take this as a business, then the view would be different of how sports is going to be. Not just in football, in athletics, in volleyball, in everyone else. There are people who want to come in, but they ask serious questions that we cannot answer.
And for this, now, from your side, from the corporate side, and you said that probably the infrastructure has always been a problem for you, then how do you adapt in the meantime if you are to engage with Kariobangi Sharks?
Well, Robert has alluded to that actually. One of the things that he has emphasized, and he said several times, is if we are serious. And I believe that he means if the club is serious. Because there are some clubs that will lay back and say, we don't even have a place to, a stadium something will go off, something will not happen. They'll argue around themselves, and at the end of the day, a match will kick off at 3:20, as you've talked about. But a brand like Sharks, and for us, why that became important is because we asked the question. There is a challenge as far as infrastructure is concerned, as far as the stadium is concerned. Where is your stadium? Where do you actually play? And I said, we play in Kasarani. However, we once in a while have to play elsewhere, our home matches. So what happens as that? When do you know that you're going to play elsewhere? And they tell us, Robert and team were very clear. We would know in hand and we'd make alternative arrangements. So an example is what, for example, he talked about Afraha Stadium. It's not their home per se. This is a team from Nairobi, from Kariobangi. But to say that they're suddenly going to play in Nakuru, Afraha Stadium, they have to be very organized for them to actually ensure that their teams are there, everything is there, they're not there fatigued, they're not showing up, they're not driving out of Nairobi at 9 p.m., there's traffic to Nakuru, they're arriving at 1 p.m., they're giving
1 a.m.
I mean, it's
can be crazy.
It can be crazy, yeah?
Can be crazy.
So it's also about how organized the team is, because I don't think that you can say that for every KPL team, to be honest.
Now, Robert, from the KPL and from your clubs at the moment, how much are you pushing for, some of these grounds, especially the county governments? How much lobbying are you doing? Because most of them are owned by the county governments, if we were to speak.
So the federation has come up in its new constitution. They've now aligned counties, because before we had branches.
Yes.
And when you have branches, you might have one branch in 3 counties. So you could not go get funding because they would ask you, you don't belong to us. So that has been aligned. The point now is once they've had counties in place, the counties then put in some amount in their sports development to these games. So we are talking to the counties to see whether KPL matches can be played in those counties. We can do a rotation on the county so that football in Mashinani is very popular. You'll be very surprised that a game in Zoo Kericho has 3,000, 4,000 fans. And they don't have the same spending power as the people in Nairobi. So we should have Nyayo ready and have 10,000, 20,000 fans coming in. So with the new constitution, the federation constitution, we will be seeing more football being played in counties. And
what about engaging with the fans? Because Kariobangi is a Nairobi team. There's a way it can work.
Yes.
I remember 20, 25 years ago, Kenya Breweries, now Tusker FC, would attract fans when people had breweries were playing. They knew this is a corporate club, which ideally should, which naturally would not attract the people. But what are you doing to have more fans engage? We need the faces in the stadium.
Yes. So we've gone digital. It's a digital era for us. We are now registering our fans in an app and getting to know them and what they like and how we can make the stadium experience better for them. Because half the time, people will come to watch football, but it is the environment that they want to be what it is. You remember we used to have hooliganism,
yes,
stones and all that. And people couldn't come with their kids to the stadium. If your kids are not coming, who are our next fans? So that's why we went to Dandora Stadium, for example. That is, unfortunately, now has issues. But it was a proper stadium. small enough with an activation area for our fans, you can have all these things, have proper engagement with them. So for us, over time, we are going to know our fans, number one. Number two, we'll know what they like, and that's what we are doing now with our fans. Shortly, we will be able to tell them in advance that this is what we want to bring according to what they require. I think what we've been doing is you want the fan to come to the stadium. For what? you see, we need to guide them to get there. And that's what I went to siku ya Mwananchi in Yanga. They have one day where they unveil their players in the stadium. And the stadium had 90,000 people, all wearing their jerseys. It meant that with 90,000 jerseys, for that particular day, only on jersey sales, they made enough to run the team the whole year. You know, and they had us from Kenya.
As guests.
As guests. Why can't we do such things? So those are the things, as you travel and you get exposed, we want to copy. We want that to be what we do here in Kenya.
The conversations I've had about, especially when it comes to the way advertising, when you're trying to reach out the sport, is that the sport is a man's game and men are creatures of habit. Basically, when you see Wahome, if he uses a particular brand of pen, then you won't tell him to, oh yeah, try this other one, maybe you can do a somersault. I won't get into, you're not excited by the product. How do you reach out to the people so that there is a relationship? And at the end of the day, the Kariobangi Shark Fund does not negatively impact your brand.
Michael Joseph, the Safaricom CEO, once said a few years ago that Kenyans are peculiar people. And I think if there was a statement in the world of advertising that was more profound, has ever been profound, that is the most profound statement. Because Kenyans are the type of people, regardless of their backgrounds, that if you take the time to understand them and tailor-make your solutions to them, then you have to also tailor-make your advertising to what resonates with them. So it's the challenge of the corporate, because sponsoring a team is not enough. It's not enough to say that we've put money in a team and they have a bunch of funds and we are suddenly going to get those funds as our clients. Not necessarily. It's a question of, as a brand, how do we resonate with what suits and fits the individuals that actually support a team like Kariobangi Sharks? So actually watch, and because it's not just about Sharks, it's about football. It's about the sport that we are so invested in as a business as well. And the onus is on us in terms of how we tailor make our communication, how we tailor make our solutions, our advertising to actually talk to the person that needs to hear. Because again, our product is not everybody's product. There are those that will resonate with it. As you know, obviously ours is a demerit good. So it is a question of who will resonate with it based on how we communicate to them. So that really becomes the challenge with us, especially of course with the current restrictions around advertising that we have as an industry.
Yes.
But then again, it's how we tailor make our communication to the right person. And football being our core business, so to speak, then that makes sense for us to partner with people who are in sports. Not just football, but sports being our core business. I shouldn't even say sports. I shouldn't even say football. I should actually say sports, because we are heavily invested in sports across the world and in Kenya as well. So it's
here's the irony of it. You call it a demerit good, and sport would be considered a merit good.
Yes.
How do you marry the two?
Well, we are sports entertainment. Sports is the need.
Actually, sports is entertainment.
Sports is entertainment.
Football is an activity.
Same. For us, we really just give you the experience of enhancing that entertainment. That's what our business is about. It's about enhancing that entertainment. It is a form of entertainment, and the onus is on us to ensure that we provide you with an experience that makes you enjoy your sports even more.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, what a conversation we've had with Robert Mauga, who is the chairman of Kariobangi Sharks. Robert, what kind of performance should we expect? Because your club set the standards high, maybe willingly or unwillingly. They might beat Everton. You raised the bar high.
Yes, we did. Our vision is to build young, talented players for selling abroad. So we have to balance winning the league, which is maturity, vis-a-vis developing that talent. So we are not going to win the league. If we win the league, that's all right. But what we want to be evaluated against is how many players have we exposed to the big leagues. I think that is what our internal evaluation will be all about.
The question
so we
is
will
always
be in the Premier League.
Okay, a question is, for example, the Egyptian league, the PSL, or which other league would we talk about? The Moroccan league. Do those count? Because I know Al made some ridiculous amount of money in the last year. I think £300 million in profit.
We want to copy their culture, but we don't want to take our players there because their culture is different to our culture. Our market is mid-Europe, top Europe, and now China, Japan is opening up. So those are the markets that we are looking to selling our players. South Africa, yes, 1 or 2 clubs, but not the whole industry. It's not yet developed enough, but very few of our players have made it to the northern region because of the culture. So we deliberately, we are not looking at North Africa, but we are looking at how they do their things because they have proper infrastructure. The fans come to the stadium. The atmosphere is fantastic. What do we need to do? We need to copy them.
All right. And Leon Kiptum, the Betway country manager, the message to not just football but to the federations from the corporate world, so that they know if they really want your coin, then there is something that you expect back from them.
Get organized, number one. Have very solid structures, people who can be trusted leading these federations. And number two, be ready to be accountable. When the hard questions come from the corporate about how you have used money in the past and how you're using money now, be ready to answer those questions and to prove that corporates will not be sinking money into a hole if they come into your sport, for example. And that goes not only to the federations but also to the clubs, because as Robert mentioned earlier, a lot of these clubs are registered as societies. The level of accountability is wanting, to be honest. So by the time a corporate actually makes the decision to put their money in, it's either out of pure passion because someone loves the team or something else, but not really because they understand where their money is going. So that's my key message. As a corporate, we look at those things, and the decision is very easy. I'll tell you for free, Kariobangi Sharks was ready for money. They were ready. They were ready. They were very organized. They were accountable. They were ready for money.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. Well, we'll be having more conversation about sports and administration. That looks more like it's going to be the focus today, because we shall be speaking with Chris Kimau, who is with Kenya International Sports Film Festival. Well, you mentioned that you won an award, so you can go tell him thank you in the meantime.